Okay. There may be a 1 second delay. All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Friday morning, July 8th, believe it or not. Almost the first week of July already underway. We're going to be joined by Jimmy Hodge, Matt Dean, Coach Matt Dean from Rhodes College will be joining us. We're going to get his thoughts on the big picture of what in the wide world of sports is going on with all the conference expansion. Really on the top level, the Power 5 schools. What does this mean for, 1AA, Division II, Division III, and what I think Dennis Dodd calls now Division IV? There's a lot of things that are happening right now. And I think it's really good to get inside the mind of people who have been coaches and athletic directors on any level, because they understand and can take all that minutia and put it in the vernacular like nobody else can. We'll be joined in the second segment by Garry Harris, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa and WVUA TV Channel 23. In the third segment, top of the second hour, we'll be joined by Yancey Porter in Oxford, checking in with some news on Ole Miss. And in the fourth segment, Jason Caldwell, inside the Auburn Tigers, will join us. He won the award last week. Very impressive. Sports Writer of the Year in Alabama. So, hey, lots to talk about today. Remember, we're here with you every Monday through Saturday, sidelines.live, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. And if you miss us live, go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. You can hear us there. We're part of their growing podcast park. They're expecting over 4 million visitors to the site this year. Let's say something about sponsors. Gateway Tire and Service Center. They go the distance for their customers and for the communities where they do business. And Reforest, Mississippi, wherever you are, for your private land, hunting land, residence, your office, it increases the value and it looks great and it gets the kids involved in planting. Support the Boy Scouts of America too. Remember, Boy Scouts, you'll learn about life, about being independent, going out on, camping trips, learning how to hunt and fish. Great stuff. Scout camps. There's a lot you can do. Get involved with the Chickasaw Council or whatever Boy Scout Council, wherever you live. And remember, follow us on Twitter again at sidelines_live, Facebook Sidelines, Instagram sidelines.live, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Matt, unless you have been in a cave, where I think a lot of people that run this country have been for a while, you're fully aware and that there's been some news from USC and UCLA last Thursday about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock p.m. Central. Hey, we're gonna go to the Big Ten. What is the next domino to fall? There's so many of them, but I want you to get started because you are from Iowa, the Midwest. You have practical common sense that other people don't.
Well, I was on vacation, Rob, when I saw the report, and the first thought I had was, wow, this don't make any sense. I was like, USC, UCLA going to play Iowa, Nebraska, and you look at Maryland and Rutgers on the east side of the Big Ten model, and then you start looking at the numbers, and it's strictly to alleviate the Big Ten in terms of the leverage they have in TV contracts, right?
Yep.
So it does make sense. Unfortunately, where we are in college football model, and you asked me a little bit about the next steps. Ironically, I have a son that works at Oregon, director of scouting for football operations. So Oregon's a big player, but there's some other things that have to happen before Oregon has its next, the next move. I mean, what's going to happen to the Pac-12? There's been reports that the Pac-12 is talking to the Big 12. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be everyone in the Pac-12 going that model. I know Oregon and Washington would love to go to the Big Ten and follow USC and UCLA, but I've heard that Notre Dame is the next one that the Big Ten really wants to model in terms of getting they've been after big Notre Dame for a while. That's no secret. But from my standpoint, this just leads to a bigger conversation about where we're headed in the next year to 2 to 3 years with college athletics in general. And there were reports, that Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State may be talking to the SEC. Are we going to 2 or 3 mega conferences? Guys, it's going to happen. I don't know the alignment, but this domino here is just huge because, first of all, I didn't realize the numbers, but I heard like maybe the payout per institution in the Pac-12 was like 30, 40 million. And then by USC, UCLA going to the Big Ten with maybe a new TV agreement, it's going to be in the neighborhood of 100 million per school. I don't know if that's accurate. I'm just throwing it out there. If that's the case, then that's a lot of money for student athletes. But I will tell you, from a practicality standpoint, guys, it's going to be really difficult in the travel for some of those student athletes. They are definitely an outlier in terms of travel.
Yeah, I mean, you think about we keep going back to the volleyball game, Rutgers and USC.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's Rutgers at USC or USC at Rutgers, but that's going to be a big deal. Jimmy and we've talked with a lot of people this week. Tony Barnhart, Mark Schlaball, Dennis Dodd yesterday. Lots of people, national writers, talking about all this expansion. And I tell you, I'm with Jimmy. He thinks the relationship with Jack Swarbrick, the AD at Notre Dame, and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is strong enough that Notre Dame is a viable, candidate for membership in the SEC. And Jimmy joined in on this thing, but I think no matter what, I don't think people realize, and Jimmy pointed it out, if the Big Ten gets Washington and Oregon, they get Seattle, which is the number 7 or 8 TV market in the country. You might have over 75% of the TV sets in the footprint of the Big Ten. So this is significant. Jimmy?
Well, yeah, and San Francisco's not a small market either. They went after a Stanford and Cal. Well, but Matt, what I am thinking on this is that they didn't accept that request for membership from USC and UCLA with the idea of having them to hang out to dry by themselves. In other words,
that's right.
I think it could very well be a situation where the Big Ten is going to create a Pacific division so that USC and UCLA don't have to face the prospect of, when they play a road game in the Big Ten, that they're going to have to travel a minimum of 2,500 miles every time they do so.
I agree.
And so I think you could very well see Washington and Oregon being paired together. But again, Notre Dame is kind of the linchpin here. You got to wait for their decision. And I have mentioned that it's not a secret that Jack Swarbrick and Kevin Warren don't have the greatest relationships that you would want to have. But yet, money talks. And the Big Ten and the SEC financially are in another planet from everybody else. So with this expansion move in full swing right now, the best of the rest and the other three Power 5 conferences are doing everything they can to, I guess, demonstrate their strengths on why the SEC and Big Ten would want to add them to their conferences. I think that's where we're at right now. But again, Notre Dame is kind of the key to the whole thing. There's been the argument, and rightfully so, that Notre Dame already has great established rivalries with multiple schools already in the Big Ten, and plus USC and Stanford. They play their regular season finale every year, either at USC or at Stanford, so the coaching staff can stay out on the West Coast after the game and recruit that area of the country, especially in California. So I think there are a lot of facets here to this equation, but we got to figure out what the timetable is, because when that report came out, Matt, on Sunday, that Notre Dame was negotiating with the Big Ten on Sunday, when you consider how quickly the USC-UCLA addition became reality within literally a 24-hour period, I was thinking that thing might move right away. And the fact that we're already to the end of the week on Friday, that's not going to happen right away, and that really adds to the intrigue.
Well, Jimmy, you mentioned something that I had not been in tune with. Notre Dame's got a lot of leverage here. They're working the SEC and the Big Ten together right now, and that may take a little time, but it's going to happen. And I just think geographically, you make a great point. The only way you bring in USC, UCLA from a practicality scheduling standpoint.
Matt, quick question. Did either of y'all have the show on in the background? We're hearing some feedback. Just double checking.
Do not.
No. Okay. Jimmy, you don't have it on. Okay. Just making sure. Okay. Keep going, Matt.
No, I'm just saying, practicality speaking of scheduling, Jimmy, they have to have some regional partners to make this work from a model that's practical for the student athletes. And I think that's something that's going to be interesting. I do think, though, that the SEC has to be talking to Notre Dame. And wow, what direction Notre Dame with their own basically TV deal anyway? What direction are they going to play? And I didn't realize the relationship with Kevin Warren, so that's a factor. Also, Swarbrick only has 2 years left on his deal, and from what I'm hearing, he may be out in 2 years to the AD at Notre Dame. So a lot of times their decisions are made at the highest level, as we know, even above the director of athletics. So I'll be really curious what happens. It's taken a while since the whole USC-UCLA decision. But this is just the beginning, guys. In 2 years, it's going to be really interesting how this plays out. I was talking to someone yesterday, ironically, how we could have a situation down the road. It's almost like the Premier League in soccer, where you had two mega conferences, and sometimes you could play your way into a certain division by success, and you could get relegated to a lower division too. Where you could have some fringe schools be a part of a mega conference that started in the lower division, perform well, and move up the next year to a bigger division. There's so many things out there right now, guys. No one knows what's going on, but it's definitely happening, and it's kind of exciting. In July, there's not a lot to talk about in sports, but right now this is pretty exciting.
Well, we said the other day, I think Doug Dean said it, from AU Dose in Birmingham, if you wanted something that could take NIL and the transfer portal off the front page, USC and UCLA dropped the bomb. And I think, guys, in the figure I saw was UCLA is $111 million in debt. And just by going to the Big Ten, and it was
Yeah.
obvious with that renegotiation of their TV rights deal, they looked at what the Pac-12 had to offer. Then they looked at what the Big Ten was throwing at them. That was a no-brainer. So by doing this, UCLA can retire 90% of their debt with the stroke of a pen. And then going forward, that TV deal that they're doing, again, let's put this in perspective. If I'm correct, I know the SEC right now, the deal CBS got for the SEC's $55 million a year. That ends after the 23 season. And then Disney, ESPN come in, and I think that deal is $350 million. We're talking right now, Big Ten, $1 billion potential deal for their TV with Fox. And it could be more if they get more schools from the Pac-12. So, Jimmy, maybe you can shed some light on this and make some sense. But I think the SEC is in a position right now where they're almost forced to do something, but they don't have to because they were ahead of everybody a year ago by bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. But my gut tells me the SEC is going to do something, and they're going to do something really big.
Yeah, well, there were reports last night that, and they were not backed up by multiple sources, but the SEC was in very serious negotiations with Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia to become members of the SEC. But Matt, I think that would put them to 20. But I think both eventually the SEC and the Big Ten are going to each go to 24 teams and have an AFC, NFC type of arrangement in football, to determine the national championship, because the money is so enormous. You're talking about if Notre Dame with either conference, I think they'll eventually be with one of the two. I just don't think this Notre Dame to the Big Ten is the only option for them, unlike a number of other people think. I think this is going to really be interesting over the next few weeks. But I also heard, and Dennis Dodd had another story last night saying that the Big 12 is negotiating actively with Arizona and Arizona State and the two mountain schools, Utah and Colorado. But they're also talking with, Oregon, Washington, also Cal and Stanford. So, this is far from over. There's a lot of speculation, but right now, if I was George Kliavkoff, I would really be nervous because I think the Big 12 does have the leverage because the Big 12 is also going to try to they're going to try to grab schools themselves. But I just think the Big 12, because of their location and the fact they would have a chance to span 3 time zones, really puts them in a strong position right now. But I just don't know where they stand when you put them up against the Big Ten and the SEC, because the brand names there's just no comparison, and with the type of TV money you could get.
All right, Matt, now's the time for a guy like Sam Kinison from Back to School, member of the history professor. He goes, I think this guy's, he goes, I think he's committed. He goes, literally, he goes, anybody in here ever heard of a little thing called the Vietnam War? And you know what happened? That girl raised her hand. She goes, yes, the policy of Vietnamization by Richard Nixon, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, that was the popular version. Well, rest, that's what we need is somebody, a truth broker, to come in here. Jimmy hinted on this yesterday on the show after the show, Matt. He made a great point that really stands out. After over 100 years of being rejected by the Big Ten, why the hell do you think Notre Dame is going to run to the Big Ten? And I think geographically, it's a perfect fit for the SEC because Kentucky's the northernmost state in the SEC. And what state does Kentucky have a long common border with? In fact, they call it Kentuckiana, Indiana.
That's right.
I mean, the Big Ten and the SEC are there's just nothing like. I mean, you know Iowa State. I mean, I got to get out to Iowa City. I've hunted a lot and pheasant hunted and driven all over Iowa, but I hadn't been to Iowa City.
You would love Iowa City.
Yeah.
You need to go to a football game in Iowa City.
Yeah, I'll go with you. And I'm going to tell you something. I was talking to Gordon yesterday. Gordon's ready to start coming back on the show, guys. He goes, "What happened? Did you fire me?" I said, "No." He said, I mean, he's been going through a lot, but we're going to get him back. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you something, Jimmy. You've been out to Iowa City. Matt, you have. I've been all over Iowa. Those people out there are as passionate as fans anywhere in the country. And they're not going to get the credit in recruiting for the 2 and the 3 stars they get, but nobody develops tight ends and offensive linemen like they do in Iowa. I don't know. It's the people out there, but the Big Ten and the SEC, I'm with Jimmy. A 24 team leagues. Yeah. A regular season, SEC, Big Ten, not bowl games, but regular season, that gives you a really good, but I think this is some of the most exciting stuff we've ever had happen in college athletics. Again, I wasn't around then. My dad almost was. He's 93. But 100 years ago, the Southern Conference had 23 members. And Matt, I know, I'll tell you something. We had Norman Jetmanson. I met him back in late April. He and David Cruz produced a documentary called Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled. Watch that. I've got a copy of it. I'll come over to your office at Rhodes. We'll watch it. It'll remind you of why we're fighting like hell to keep college, and the pros. But we're going to do it. And everybody thinks, oh, it's ruined and all. Matt, you know as well as anybody on the business end. Okay. Nobody with a lot of money, unless they're an idiot, is going to just throw money at 17 and 18-year-old unproven commodities. I mean, you get people that graduate from Harvard Law School. They don't start out making $2 or $3 million a year. They probably don't start out making anywhere from 80 to 140 maybe. And that's not bad money, but
no.
I think, and you think about Rhodes. Look, academically, I'll vouch. I mean, Rhodes is an Ivy League type school. It's that good. You know that. But I just think this Big Ten SEC thing and the Big 12, we had Bo Carter from the Big 12 on yesterday. They're going to almost by default have a lot of things fall in their lap. But if it gets more intersectional football games being played, then what we're doing right now is a great thing. And you know what? Again, it's so easy to get caught up in all the negativity. I see great things coming out of this, Jimmy. I see exposure of teams that really weren't as good as they thought they were when they have to play a tougher schedule. That's at the top of the list.
Well, I think it's going to be a situation where a lot of different parties benefit. I think by having a monster type playoff system to determine the national championship, I think you're going to see an arrangement where the group of 5 schools are going to be getting a good share of money from this so-called tournament, I guess, a football type tournament. And then also, I think Division II, Division III at the NCAA level. I think because we all know that so many of these current FCS programs have really depended on these money games against Power 5 schools as a huge part of their athletic budget for the coming year. And with those games going away with these super conferences, I think the powers that be at all the levels of the NCAA hierarchy are going to set aside some sizable money to help those different programs out, because that's just common sense, because the amount of money that's going to be made by the conferences themselves just from the TV contracts, but then the actual playoff. I mean, I think there's going to be plenty of money to hand out to these other schools over the years that have made it possible for these super conference teams to fill out their schedules.
Jimmy, that's one of the smartest things I've heard. And we brought it up yesterday. I agree. Because, Matt, you don't want to see programs. I don't want to see the Sun Belt or the Southland or the SWAC or any of these conferences that are called Group of Five or below that. I don't want them to go away. Sports are every campus in America, every college has athletic programs. There's a reason for that. You're teaching the lessons of life, aren't you?
You are, and as you guys know too, I've been a Division III lifer from a coach, head coach, assistant coach, administrator, athletic director. I've been at the top of the org chart at that level on an athletic staff, and every year, the March Madness contract, CBS contract, 3% of that money goes to fund the entire Division III championship structure. So when we make the NCAA tournament in women's basketball this past year, I mean, that is all funded by that money. And then, like you mentioned, Jimmy, now you have an influx of more money on the football side. Can that money now filter down to the lower levels to do the same thing that basketball did, right? And I agree with both of you. It's really exciting. Jimmy, the idea you threw out there with the two mega conferences and have an NFL playoff-like structure, AFC, NFC, brings more teams into the playoffs, more opportunity, more money. Look last year at how competitive Cincinnati was, and the Group of Five team, and how they're going now to the Big 12. I believe that's what their landing spot with conference realignment. I just think when you now have a football model that hopefully includes 8 to 12 teams in a playoff format, don't give me this crap that we're worried about missed class time and extra games, right?
Yeah.
Put
that in the damn crapper.
I've been running this model at my level, and those kids that play in intercollegiate athletics, they work their schedule out with their professors.
Exactly.
Let's that's a big misnomer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do this to the fullest. Let's reap the rewards. Let it trickle down through the system, and it makes the whole product better from every level. You're right. We benefit at my level when the highest level has the most success. It's a trickle down effect. Okay. So I agree with what you guys are saying.
Yeah. And Matt, I love that take on that because, and Jimmy, you're right. If we go to a 12-team playoff, in theory, we go from $450 million being made on a 14 playoff to 3 times that. That's $1.35 billion. We could put down like the media rights, the conference distribution to the members of the American Athletic Conference, of which the University of Memphis is a member. They only got like $7 million per school last year.
Right.
Matt, I mean, I just was at lunch last week with Dr. Hardgrave, the new president of the University of Memphis. He came up from Auburn. He was the provost, but prior to that, he was the dean of the College of Business. He knows about that, athletics and academics. And it's he's focused on getting Memphis to the best level, highest level they've ever been. It's going to take a lot of effort, but I wouldn't be surprised for Memphis and Boise or something like that we heard yesterday in the Big 12. And I think that it's a win-win deal. And there's a lot of things, though, that a conference looks at. They want to see what kind of crowds you have for the games when you're playing a no-name school, like one of the rental wins or whatever. You got to have 60,000 at the Liberty Bowl going to see Memphis play, not who you're playing. That's why they haven't gotten there yet. Dr. Hardgrave, you've got to meet him. We need to get you in touch.
I'd love to. Send that for me.
I will. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to ask him because I'm going to tell you what, this guy is.
He may need a new special assistant that can help him get to the Big 12. I could be that guy.
Yeah. Listen, he is a winner. He is a winner. He took the College of Business at Auburn to where they're now larger than more students than the College of Engineering. No one ever thought that would happen. That's like having a great hockey team in Arizona, And I'm not talking about NHL. I'm talking about high school. But anyway, Matt, I love this conversation because Jimmy breaking down. Yeah, it's obvious that the Big Ten, SEC, mega conference. Jackie Sherrill talked about this in the dining room at the University Club. Matt, you've probably been to a few meetings over there over the years. The Touchdown Club, 30 years ago, he predicted all this mega conference stuff happening. But you know what? Let's make sure that we take care of the schools that need help. I mean, I'm not a socialist. I'm not saying give it, but they have played they all play a huge role. You know, no one would have ever heard of Paul W. Bryant from Fordyce, Arkansas, if he hadn't been afforded an athletic scholarship to Alabama. He was not from a wealthy family. He was one of 12 children. But by God, when he went back home to Fordyce, he took a hell of a lot of pride in looking at all those people that used to poke fun at him and make sport of him. He overcame it. It's like Keith Jackson said one time, these coaches in the Southeastern Conference, they may talk funny, but they don't think funny. And that's so great about sport. Matt, let's do this again next week. I love your optimism, and I'm going to call you after the show about that. Dr. Hargrave is going out everywhere, meeting with people. And, you know, again, as the provost, you know this, you have a president, but the provost executes the game plan, doesn't he?
All the time. I mean, you tell me everywhere you go, if there's a great president, there's a great provost associated with that as well. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
every great man, there's a great woman in the marriage.
That's right. That's right.
I got mine sitting next to me.
This show's a great example. Production's important. It matters.
It is. Hey, Matt, have a great day. I'll talk to you here at about 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning. I'll give you a holler, and we'll get this set up, okay?
Rob and Jimmy, thanks for everything. You guys take care.
You too. Appreciate it. Let's take a quick commercial break on this Friday, July 8th. It is already 105, feels like 94. Folks, it's going to be 103 today. All you see on the weather is an orange ball of sun with a heat index of like 116. My advice is to drink water heavily. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jimmy Hodge. Great stuff there with Coach Matt Dean. 31 years at Rhodes College in Memphis. 16 of them as a basketball coach, and also associate AD. And just gives us a lot. Gives us a lot of perspective on any level. What you're looking at, the college athletic model, it takes a lot of people with a lot of business sense to make it work. And here's another great one, WVUA TV Channel 23, Tide 100.9, a proud native of Anniston, Alabama. That's right near Oxford. If you're ever on the Interstate I-20, we always stop at the Publix there in Oxford, Gary. Welcome to Sidelines, man. Glad to have you back. It's always great having you on because you bring positive karma and great news along with gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
I don't know about all that, but it's good to be with you guys as always on a Friday morning this week, normally Thursday, but it's TGIF, man, so good deal.
It is. I appreciate you switching days. We'll do Thursday next week. Hey, we've had a lot of discussion throughout the week about the conference expansion and what is going on, and it's just happening at such a fast pace, Gary, that it's hard to put your handle on it. But the SEC is going to have to make a move here sooner than later, I would think. What do you think the SEC is likely to do?
Gosh, Rob, I don't really have any idea, and I don't know. I've thought a lot about the timetable. I don't know that it's going to be sooner rather than later. I really don't. I think that right now the conference is pretty comfortable with the 16-team model with Oklahoma and Texas coming in.
And I think that clearly there's a lot of discussion about the Big Ten adding more teams, possibly the leftover Pac-12 and Big 12 combining and getting up to over 20 teams. So I'm not saying that it won't happen, but I think the SEC is they're in a powerful position. I mean, they're the conference I think that everybody aspires to be, and even the Big Ten. I mean, I think that's why the Big Ten made the move with SC and UCLA, because they felt pressure to keep up with the SEC. So I think the SEC and Greg Sankey are going to not do anything just to react to someone else. I think that their plan is their plan. Could it be adjusted? Sure. But right now, I don't think that they're out scrambling around saying, "Oh my gosh, we got to add 2 more teams or 4 more teams," or anything like that. It's just not the way I view it. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe they're already in discussions with ACC teams to try to get out of their media rights deal or whatever, but I don't think anything's going to happen right away. I think right now the focus is still just on getting Oklahoma and Texas in, and just kind of viewing the lay of the land. So I don't know, to answer your question. That's the honest answer. But my gut feeling is that something could happen down the road, but I'm not anticipating anything as far as an announcement in the near future.
Yeah, and what I think the SEC is likely to do is, more than anything, go take the best of the ACC, try to cherry pick them, and that may be Virginia, UNC, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, something like that, kind of like the old Southern Conference that we had go back 100 years ago, and from Virginia all the way out to Texas. And that is a very likely scenario. And then part of me says we're bringing sand to the beach if we bring Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, because we've already got South Carolina and we've got Florida. Is it eyeballs? Is it bringing marquee brand name programs in? I think it's a combination of both, Gary.
Yeah, I can see that. And, I think some of it too is just trying to project what college football is going to look like in 5 years. And I think that's Greg Sankey and the SEC presidents and athletics directors' job to kind of be able to have vision to look ahead, to make the moves that they need to move, whatever they are. The thing with the ACC, again, and Rob, you probably are much better on, and you and Jimmy on this end of it than I am, because I really usually just kind of focus more on the ball side, on the game side, the athletic side, that I do all of the administrative stuff and even conference expansion just kind of wears me out. But I mean, ACC teams are locked in. I mean, they've got their media rights deal going through 2036, right? Yep. So I mean, for those schools to leave, unless I guess they just disbanded the conference and dealt with lawsuits. I mean, you have to lawyer up on both ends, whether you're the ACC schools trying to get out or you're the conference that's trying to get them in. So that's my question. I mean, I know in this day and age, contracts don't seem to mean anything anymore, and nobody's word doesn't mean squat. But I guess I would throw this back at you, Rob. If you try to get any of these ACC schools, what are you looking at in terms of the legal aspect, in terms of a timetable? I mean, it isn't just, hey, we're going to invite you and you're going to come in, right? Not that easy. That simple, is it?
No, it's not. And I think what you're looking at, if you go and get Clemson, Florida State, Miami, schools like that, I think you're looking at a hell of a legal battle. But Jim Phillips in this alliance they tried to form with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, that was a joke.
What a joke that turned out to be, right?
Yeah. And I'm with Frank Duffy and Jimmy. If I'm anybody meeting with Kevin Warren, I'm going to have food tasters around me. I'm not eating anything at the table, because they were supposed to have this big, partnership with the Pac-12, and all they did was take their 2 biggest marquee brand names. So it's interesting. But look, they got a lot of football to talk about. Can you believe it? Media Day is coming up July 18th to the 21st, and then August 1st, 2 weeks later, it's practice time. So it's a great time of year, Jimmy.
Yeah, Gary, I think with this ACC situation for schools to leave the conference, during the last round of expansion, the ACC had a number of years ago, they established a $60 million exit fee. But I think in the case of, let's just say for the cause of argument, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Virginia join the SEC, I don't think there's any doubt that the SEC and ESPN would both bundle some resources to help with a huge amount of those exit fees. So I don't think that would be that much of a big legal battle. It's just a question of, what this time frame is going to be, how quickly these moves are going to be made. And you probably haven't thought about it much. And I'd like to see what, Rodney also thinks about this. But if you think Notre Dame would be a legitimate candidate for possible SEC expansion, because we all know that Jack Swarbrick and Greg Sankey, along with Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson, worked extensively for the better part of 2 years to put together this 12-team playoff that was blown up by Kevin Warren, George Kliavkoff, and Jim Phillips because of their unhappiness of Texas and Oklahoma choosing to join the SEC. So that was delayed at least 2 years. But we also know that once this new contract comes into existence with the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to control the playoff format anyway. So it's going to be a moot point. But what's your thought on Notre Dame? Because, a lot of people don't realize Notre Dame's had a lot of rivalries over the last century with a number of these SEC schools. And of course, we remember the two great Georgia games in the last 4 or 5 years, and the Alabama series, intermittent as it has been over the last half century, but they played Georgia Tech for over a century on and off. So there are a number of schools that Notre Dame has a history with, but also with Notre Dame coming in recruiting as a member of the SEC, how much recruiting punch do you think that would give them going down into Georgia, Florida, and those SEC states that have so many elite high school football players?
It's a fascinating question, Jimmy. All these questions are fascinating, and the answers are blowing in the wind. We're gonna find out, I think, the answers to most of these questions at some point in time. I do think it is going to be in Notre Dame's best interest at some point to look at getting into a conference. I just do. With all the things that you guys are bringing up this morning, and whether eventually we just have two conferences and it's kind of like the AFC and the NFC and the NFL, or if we have the SEC, the Big Ten, and then the other three conferences forming their own power conference, and we have 3 power conferences. But I don't think there's any doubt, as far as from a football aspect, we're looking at some point in the near future at maybe 50 or 60 teams max playing in their own little world with their own national champion, and everybody else is going to be left to fend for themselves. Is what it looks like to me. Now, how that's going to look, I don't know. As far as Notre Dame, I do think that at some point, with the way this is trending, I just I know they have the agreement with the ACC, but as you guys have pointed out, we don't even know what the ACC is going to look like. Football-wise, I think they're going to wind up getting in a conference. And to your question, Jimmy, why not the SEC? I mean, I just think the assumption is that it's the Big Ten. When they're ultimately going to join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten. The Big Ten has coveted Notre Dame for many, many years. Geographically, it matches up, but geography means nothing anymore. We see that. I mean, you're going to have USC and UCLA flying to Rutgers and Maryland and vice versa. We're going to have, the SEC bringing in Texas and Oklahoma, which, certainly aren't in the southeastern portion of the United States. So ACC, the same thing. Geography is out the window. So I do think that Notre Dame, if they do something, they're going to have to look at the best situation for them. And I'm with you with the relationship with Sankey and Swarbrick and what the potential is there. I think the SEC is on the table for Notre Dame, and there's no conference in the country that would turn that school down. So would I still favor the Big Ten if and when Notre Dame joins a conference full time? Yes, I would. But Do I think the SEC is a possibility too? Yes. So that's really the best way that I can answer that.
Gary, you remember in the 1980s, the video killed the radio bug? I'll tell you right
Video
now.
killed the radio star? Yeah,
Video
absolutely.
killed the radio star.
First is the Buggles, first music video ever played on MTV. Yeah, I remember it well.
Well, the internet was the border breaking. The internet broke the borders down. And I agree with you totally, because you can be anywhere in this country. You can be in Alaska or Washington State and subscribe to Tider Insider and WVUA Channel 23 and watch what you and Rodney Orr do every night. They can watch you 3 sportscasts a night. You can get information anywhere. And I think that the Notre Dame deal is intriguing because the largest growth of any area in the country in the Catholic Church is in the South. I mean, I live in Memphis, a river town, about 95, almost 100,000 Catholics. We got a Catholic mayor. We got a Catholic district attorney. We got a Catholic head of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Look at Alabama. I got friends that go out of their way to go to Tuscaloosa, to go to the Sabin Student Catholic Center. And that's Notre Dame. It would be, think about for TV. I mean, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Auburn, Oklahoma, Georgia. These are just every week games. And you know what I've learned? There's one thing, those never get old. I mean, it never gets old making deposits into the bank, okay? And all the great stuff that comes with that. That just doesn't get old. And these great intersectional games, holy cow, you put Notre Dame, you know, somebody said it on the show this week, because I always want to make sure and give credit. May have been Dennis Dodd yesterday. You know, they're kind of pregnant being in the ACC light, but they're not fully in there. Well, you know, you've got to be a conference member. You got to be fully immersed in all aspects. Like, let's switch gears and talk about college football. The magazines, you know, you're right. They're coming out. I got my Athlon's Southeastern copy here with Tennessee, Hendon Hooker's on the front page. And no matter where you go, the local, you know, whatever state you're in, you're going to get your guys on there. But Lindy's is out. I think Phil Steele's magazine. Jimmy, is it today or is it next Friday at Barnes & Noble? Phil Steele's preseason football annual is going to come out. Does it come with a magnifying glass to read the small print?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. He's got a lot of information he's got to cram in there, but I think it is next Friday, right before SEC Media Days.
Okay. It's a great.
But anyway, yeah, there's a ton of information in there, and it covers every, of course, FBS team, all 130 teams, everybody in Division II. I mean, it's just as thorough as you can get, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those like you guys that still get excited about the magazines too. I mean, it's I don't do like I used to do and run down to the newsstand and wait for them to come out. And like you said, we have the internet, we have all the information, but it's still fun. I think sometimes just to sit in your chair and a magazine like Phil Steele's, which is so in depth, to sit there and read it and do it the old fashioned way. And you know, that's a link to the past. And you're talking about all this expansion. It's being driven by TV. You know, Fox is driving the Big Ten expansion, and ESPN, since they're taking over the SEC deal, is driving the SEC expansion. And the one thing that I'm fearful of with the technology age that some of college football, and I think it's already happened with college basketball to a degree, but it's going to become a made-for-TV sport. Yeah, you know, Alabama or Auburn or Tennessee or LSU are hosting a big SEC matchup. There's still going to be a full stadium, but a lot of these conferences and a lot of these games that they play when they're playing out of conference schools or non-power fives, people aren't going to go. You know, they're just not going to go, and you're going to see half empty stadiums. We're already starting to see it, but it won't matter because the TV money's there and the eyeballs will be on television. And you know, I've said this before. I think I've used this example with you guys is that, you know, you look at these holiday basketball tournaments now, November and December, played in these major venues. And some of them are played obviously in smaller, but you know, Madison Square Garden, whatever. And you might see, you know, for some of these tournaments, you might see 1,000 people in the stands to watch really good basketball, but it doesn't matter because they're on TV. And and now you've got the streamers that are getting involved. I mean, it's all about, being able to watch and have access to it, and not necessarily anymore about buying tickets and going to the game. That's still going to be a big part of it for the big games. But some of these games that the fans don't perceive as top tier games, they're not going to go. And, we already see a lot of people that come to Tuscaloosa to tailgate that don't go to the games. I've had them tell me, there's no way I'm going in that stadium. I'm going to sit here with my, with our setup. We're going to have, food and watch all the games and soak in the atmosphere, but not going in the stadium. So the biggest change for me in terms of watching habits is just that I think we're losing the grassroots aspect of what college football is all about. And every game's on television or being streamed, and you don't have to go anymore. And a lot of people aren't going. And I just think this is a trend that's going to continue, where television is going to dominate, and that's what's going to matter. And if you turn on a game and it's not a full stadium, it's not going to have as big an impact as it once did, and people are not even going to give it a second thought.
Well,
Gary, I think that could be an opportunity where if a lot of these larger donors decide they're not going to go to games, or no family members or friends of theirs are going to go, you could really work out deals with with youth groups and the communities where these schools are located, so that you could allow underprivileged kids maybe to go to some of those type games. I mean, could be a life-changing event, and at the same time, you would have fans there that are thrilled to be there. And there's always a positive in every situation that you see. Kind of like if you were kids a long time ago in Major League Baseball, in certain cities they had the knothole gang, where young kids under supervision could go to the games. And again, they talk about that experience to this very day. So, but yeah, it has been a problem that we all know administrators have been concerned about. But at the same time, I think it'd be neat if they could find a way maybe to turn it into a positive, because as you mentioned, the schools are going to make money anyway off the TV contracts. And
right.
It would just be great to have as many people in the stadium that really want to be there, and who it would mean a lot to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think you could see that. And also, I know that the schools and the athletic directors and athletic departments are doing everything that they can to make the in-game experience unique, so that people will still want to come to the games. I know that's a big point of emphasis here at Alabama and all these SEC schools, is what can we do in-game to make it a unique experience, something that you can't get on television. And I know they're working hard at that, and we're seeing it now with the lights and all the things that go on. So that I do think there's a lot of work going into, hey, listen, we want to be able to give the fans that come to the games something that they can't get on TV. So they're trying. And as you said, I think that'd be a great idea. These games where, you're going to have tickets available and not going to be used. Yeah. Come up with some type of plan to distribute those tickets then to people who normally can't come to a game or don't have an opportunity to come, whatever kind of groups it may be, church groups, school groups, underprivileged youth, whatever, and get those seats full, because I've seen it, big trend in the last few years, that late, usually falls somewhere a week or two before the Iron Bowl, that late Alabama non-conference game where, oftentimes it's senior day even, and there's maybe, in a 100,000 seat stadium, there's maybe 70,000 people in there. And you see 25, 30,000 empty seats, and it just looks strange for an Alabama football game. So, Jimmy, I think that's a great idea.
Well, what we can do right now, I know at Auburn, you get your tickets on email. And so somebody doesn't want to use their tickets and they want to sell them to you, they just forward the email to you. And when you go into the stadium, they scan it. And that way you don't have to worry about, oh my God, I left my tickets back in Memphis on the table in the kitchen, 6 tickets. And you're out of luck. I mean, and now you could get, maybe they could look up your serial numbers and make you a fake ticket or something. But I agree. We got to get as many people in the stands just to grow the brand of football for fans. But I do think the tailgating, I call it the Ole Miss, the Grove effect. And that's what's happened is that we have the Grove effect where people are going to just go and hang out. Some families go camping on the weekends. Others go tailgating on the weekend. And they may bring their RVs, but, it's in Tuscaloosa, Athens, Auburn, anywhere you go. Ever since 9/11, what we've done is we've pushed the fans further and further away from the stadium. And you go to Tuscaloosa or Auburn or Knoxville, you got to ride. They've got shuttle buses taking you from these RV parks to the stadium. And otherwise it's a, 2-mile walk or a 5-mile walk. Nobody wants to do that. But we've got to, I think, smart. If the fans are not going to come to these games, other people will gladly gobble up those seats. And that's been going on for a long time. Hey, football attendance back in the late 70s and the early 80s was nothing compared to what it is now. And that's including the 1984 lawsuit, the CFA deal, Oklahoma and Georgia, Chuck Ninish, the College Football Association, to get all the games on TV. And what we've seen since then is every stadium in America has expanded multiple times. And we saw the Iron Bowl move out of Birmingham. And look what that did. Alabama Stadium now is the Marquee Palace. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then you look at other schools who need to, Auburn needs to do a lot of work on their stadium. They got to, but in college, guys, it's neat to say how old your stadium is. In the NFL, you talk about how new your stadium is. And now here we are trying to make college more like pro. No. Let's don't do that.
Yeah, I got about a minute. But yeah, Rob, I agree with you. I remember in the 70s, 80s too, the stadiums were smaller and we were forced to expand, and the whole emphasis was on getting games on campus. So I agree with you there. I just think, though, the generation of people that have come after us, they don't grow up. It's just different. They've grown up in the TV and in the media age. So maybe in the 70s, 80s, you didn't get to go to a game, but a lot of times it was because you couldn't. They didn't. They're just different. It was a different time, and it wasn't a case where everybody could get to the games. But the games weren't all on television, so if you didn't go, you missed it. And you read about it in the newspaper, you listened to it on the radio, or you got a friend to tell you about it. These people now are growing up with the idea that if they don't go to the games, there's nothing lost, though. It's all there for them. It's all available on their phone, on their computer, on television. So it's just a different way of doing it. But you're right. We always have to evolve. We'll continue to evolve. I'm with you guys on this. I think college football and college athletics is still healthy. And my expectation is that even with all the changes, we're still going to have college football in 5 years, 10 years. And what it's going to look like, we're not sure. But I just think it's still too good a product. There's too much love and passion for it, and it's too important to too many people for it to go away. So I'm still optimistic about the future. I don't want anybody to misread what I've said, but
no,
I do
not
think
at all. Amen. Yeah. Gary, I totally agree with what you said. I know you got to go. You got a great show. Tell them about it.
Yeah, Garry Harris show coming up on at 9 o'clock on Tide 100.9 FM, Tide109.com. You can catch it there or download the Tide 109 app. TV-wise, WVUA23.com, or you can click on there and get a live stream if you want to watch our Tuscaloosa-based sportscast on weeknights at 5, 6, and 10, and weekends at 10. Hey, thank you, guys.
All right, have a great weekend, Gary. See you next week.
See you, Gary.
All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Having fun, man. First day live streaming, working out some kinks. Jimmy, we coming through loud and clear?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure are.
I can hear you. Okay. Now, we'll take a quick commercial break. We're going to be joined by Yancey Porter in Oxford, Mississippi, talking about the Ole Miss Rebels. I think they're still celebrating that College World Series national championship. David Kellum and that celebration they had at Swayze Field last week was one for the ages. We'll be right back to talk about the Rebels, Lane Kiffin, and what they're going to do to try to top last year's Sugar Bowl 10-win season.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, Call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on this second hour of Sidelines on Friday, July 8th, 2022. Always important to date your shows, and great stuff with Garry Harris and Jimmy. I've always loved to see that. I mean, you'll see high school band day, military appreciation day, or whatever, where tickets that have been bought and paid for are distributed to people who are going to use them. Because, yeah, some people, sometimes you got reasons you can't go. A person may be sick. They may have a business trip that takes them out of town or whatever. And, you know, you want people to experience college football. How many players over the years have you read their stories? Bobby Humphrey's one that comes to example as an example. Grew up in Birmingham. And what did he do? He sold Cokes and programs at Alabama football games. And where did he sign and play college football? Alabama. I mean, there's little things like that. Somebody gives them a ticket and they go to a game, and that starts a lifelong love affair between that fan and that school. Fans don't leave you because you're losing games, or they don't join you because you're winning games. They join you and they support you because they see the commitment to always do your best. You know, nobody interviews someone for a job, and the person they're interviewing, you know, you ask them, you know, what do you want to accomplish if you work for our company? And you're not going to have a person come on there and say, well, if you hire me, I'm just going to come in here and kind of show up late, give a half-ass effort, and I'm not real motivated. They're not going to hire you. That same thing. People become fans of schools. You know, Yancey Porter, Yancey, you're on here with us right now. We're talking about how fans develop relationships. And Jimmy brought up a good point with Garry Harris in the previous segment down in Tuscaloosa. Fans aren't going to go to every game. Well, get the tickets in the hands of people that can. With email scanning and everything like that we have now, it's easy to get your tickets to somebody else. They're just going to scan them when they walk into the stadium on your iPhone. Everybody's got an iPhone. I mean, my goodness, and or some kind of phone, but that's the way you do it. And I think they still make paper tickets, but I'm not sure. But you can print them off. But get people to the stadiums. And Yancey, I want to ask you, when this was a question brought up, when did the Grove become what it is? I know in 1984 was the first time Auburn ever played Ole Miss in Oxford. Prior to that, it had been played in the holy cow! It had been played in the Humidity Bowl down in Jackson at Memorial Stadium. But man, I mean, I'm telling you, I still have PTSD from the 1990 September 14th game. Auburn versus Ole Miss. Is that I don't know where that is. Is that somebody's dog? That's not here. No. But Yancey, I think about that September 14th, 1990 Auburn Ole Miss game. That's the hottest game I've ever been to in my life. The only thing close was September 15th, 2018, Auburn LSU. Over 2,600 people went down with heat casualties and whatnot. But, you know, Oxford in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when the Grove really caught fire. And I think what's happened is fans all over the Southeastern Conference, And around the country, it's the Grove effect. You might have 40 or 50,000 people tailgating that have no intention of going inside the stadium, but then you've got a full stadium. I think fans just want to be on campus to be part of the event. It's like a outdoor concert, man. Who wouldn't give anything to go back in time right now to a Woodstock, or something like that? Now, there was some malfeasance and some craziness going on right there that the decorum prohibits describing and listing on this show. But we all know they weren't going to bed at 10 o'clock. They were having fun. The college game day environment is so powerful. I think regardless of opponent or whatever, people just want to be there, Yancey. And you all started this really in Oxford.
Yeah, well, first of all, speaking of that 1990 game between Ole Miss and Auburn, that's when I learned firsthand what the kind of jinx is for Auburn against Ole Miss. That was an eye-opener. If you remember, that's when Pat Dye was still coaching. I think the score was 10-7. Ole Miss had first and goal on the 10 or 5-yard line, somewhere down there. And Ole Miss was about to score and threw a pick six the other way, and Auburn won the game. If you recall, Ole Miss rolled off 9 wins in a row after that game and ended up in the Gator Bowl that year. That was my freshman year in college.
You're talking 1990.
I still remember that. I still remember that game like yesterday. It just seems like no matter what, how bad Auburn is, how good Ole Miss is, Ole Miss just seems that something always happens against Auburn. So thank you for reminding me about that game.
Well, Yancey, hey,
but no, about the Grove, it's always, it changed. It used to be parking in the Grove. And even as a little kid in the 70s and 80s, you couldn't get a spot in the Grove. It was a different setup where you didn't have the tents and the tailgating. You had tailgating, but it was by your car. But it's been that way for as long as I've been alive. I'm 50 years old now. So the setup changed where they quit allowing cars in the Grove. I believe that was in the mid-1990s, a couple years after I was out of college, maybe it was towards the end of my college. But the Grove's been the Grove. Whether the setup was with tents or tailgating by your car, but it's always been that way. But yes, it is. The tailgating is now at all schools is 50% of the game, right? I mean, that's what people love to do. They love to get with their friends. They love to cook out. They love to see all their old friends that they haven't seen in 20 and 30 years. And that's kind of what has made baseball so popular now, because you get the tailgate in the outfield, right? That is what is really made SEC baseball, but college baseball in general. Although Auburn, and I went with my Auburn buddy to the Ole Miss Auburn game. We rode out there to Omaha together, and Auburn doesn't have that set up there in left field. They have that huge wall. They do in right field, and he said that they kind of party in the parking center up there in the parking lot they have in left field. And I told them they're going to have to tear that down, and they're going to have to get some kind of tailgate going there in left field, or they're missing out on thousands of fans. And he said that it had become really popular with the Auburn students to kind of tailgate in that parking lot up there in left field. And I said, that ain't going to cut it. So, yeah, it is all about the tailgate. Let's not kid ourselves. People love to eat and drink and see pretty women and see their old friends and everything else. So, yes, no doubt about it. The tailgate is definitely a lot of the allure of college sports in general.
Well, Yancey.
So basically, Yancey, then the Grove, as basically the outside college world knows it, and what they've been told about it has been in existence since about 93, right? Because I was at that Alabama Ole Miss game in 93 when David Palmer came in at quarterback, and it was a similar type game. Alabama, as usual, found a way to win it, Yep. And I think it broke a fairly long Ole Miss home winning streak there. But I think the Grove was in operation then as we know it now. And then from that point on, just the the growth of it and its status in college football legend, I think, has been unmatched as far as just the pregame atmosphere goes.
Yancey.
Well, yes, that's true. 1993,
Yancey, can you hear
David
me?
Palmer. That's when Tim Bowens broke the quarterback. I cannot remember the quarterback's name. Broke his leg in the second quarter, and Deuce, as they called him, for Alabama. Palmer single-handedly beat Ole Miss. Anything with an A on the helmet, Ole Miss melts away at the end. Or some way in the history of Ole Miss, Alabama, and Auburn. All Ole Miss fans talk about Alabama as, we got to find a way to beat Bama. And I always, the first thing I say, don't forget about Auburn. I don't care if Auburn's 1-10 and Ole Miss is 10-1. Something's going to happen in that game where Ole Miss loses. So, yeah, that's another, and that's funny, Jimmy, that 93 game against Alabama there. Ole Miss was 5-1. It was probably the biggest scene I've ever seen in the Grove outside of the 2003 LSU Ole Miss game. That was the winner, went to the SEC title there in Atlanta. That was, Ole Miss lost every game after that. Alabama lost there at the very end where Palmer threw that beautiful pass, about a 60-yard bomb in the air over London's Price, a first-round draft pick for Ole Miss, their stud cornerback, to beat them. They lost every single game after that game and then went on a really, really bad probation. Billy Brewer gets fired, and Peyton Manning announced for Tennessee. Those were some really good days. I'm being facetious there.
Yeah. Yancey, when you think about that 1990 Ole Miss team went to the Gator Bowl, played Michigan, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
best team I've ever seen in college football to this day.
Yeah, and I remember
they stomped a hole
Yeah.
in Ole Miss. I think it was like 52-3.
Yeah, it was awful. But you're talking about that 1990 Auburn Ole Miss game. I'd been in Greenville that morning and ran the Heart of Dick oh my gosh, the triathlon there in Lake Ferguson. It was a great place to film a sequel to Creature of the Black Lagoon. It's like swimming in mud. And we got back, went down to Jackson that afternoon for the Auburn Ole Miss game. And it was 17. Okay. It was 17-10 in that game late, and Auburn had struggled. Tommy Luke was the quarterback for Ole Miss. And it was there was no wind. It was 187 in the shade. About 250 people were treated for heat exhaustion casualties. And right there at the end of the game, Auburn got a pick six. It was Auburn's strong safety, Dennis Wallace from Carrollton, Georgia, number 30, ran it back in. Auburn won 24-10, but I just didn't feel really good about that Auburn team. And they sort of skated on thin ice. They got a win, 18-17, last second win in Starkville against Mississippi State. Then they went down to play Florida in year one of Steve Spurrier, and the wheels fell off. And it was 48-7. I think Auburn was beaten. But go back and the Tiger Walk at Auburn started in 1961. That is a tradition that everybody else has followed. So you think about Ole Miss, it really, the tailgating has always been big. I'm not saying it just the first place they ever did it was Ole Miss, but it's at a level where people in the Grove, you've got the people from the Delta, you got the people from the Hill Country, you got the people from the coast. You know what I'm talking about, Yancey. And I go down there, and I'm telling you, you need to fast for a couple of days because they're the warmest, most kind people. And my Auburn friends, I think Archie Manning's right. Auburn and Georgia fans love coming to the Grove, to Oxford, more than anybody. I don't know what it is, but it's just an incredible place. And I'm going to tell you, just go to Oxford. Go down there, go to Square Books. There's one on each corner. Sit out there on that balcony and read a book. They got more selections. They got more books on Southern culture, Southern college football, history. That's where they have the Writers Festival, Double Decker, all that down there. But it's just, I can see why people, Yancey and Jimmy, want to come to Oxford because there's a lot to do. There's great restaurants, City Grill, Downtown Grocery, Proud Larry's. There's a bunch of them. And of course, at 3:00 in the morning after a football game, who could ever forget getting chicken on a stick over there at the Chevron station? and my little brother in the fraternity at Auburn, Matt White, he had a little brother named Abner White. And Abner wanted to come to Auburn. They told him he could walk on. He went to Ole Miss, got a scholarship, and started there for Billy the Dog Brewer, the pride of Columbus, Mississippi. But I think back about, man, you're right. Auburn Ole Miss games, it's one of the, it's weird. It's kind of like Auburn in basketball historically when they go to Nashville. I walked through a practice one time. Sonny Smith was out there and he goes, look, I don't know what happens to you guys, but we got a hell of a team. But when that dang bus crosses the Tennessee border going up to play Vanderbilt, you guys forget how to play basketball. And I don't know that, but that Auburn Ole Miss rivalry, that's a fun one. And it's a fun, Oxford is an incredible place to go. And I got to tell you, Yancey, that celebration of the national championship was one for the ages. And I really want to get David Kellum on this show. I realize he's been doing Ole Miss games since 1985 when Stan Torgensen stepped down. I mean, and Kellum, I've always thought Kellum was about 35 or 40 years old. I don't know how old he is, but he gets excited. And I mean, he is invested. Football games, basketball, baseball. He does it all, doesn't he?
He does it all. First, to call it a rivalry, those teams have got to beat each other, right? So I don't know how much of a rivalry you call Ole Miss, Auburn, and football, because Ole Miss certainly has not beaten Auburn enough in my lifetime to be considered a rivalry. But yes, it is always the Auburn. Ole Miss fans look at Auburn as probably the nicest fans in the SEC. That's what Ole Miss thinks of Auburn. Well, first they think of Auburn as like, how does Ole Miss continue to choke when they play Auburn? I mean, you can look at the last 2 years as a prime example. Auburn had no business winning either one of those games, and Ole Miss simply could not get the job done. They just don't play well when they play against Auburn. But having said that, Ole Miss still views Auburn as the nicest fan base in the SEC. And that's widely known.
Well, and I think that the way I look at it, I go to a lot of games. Jimmy does, you do. I get along with fans everywhere I go. I don't know. Maybe that's my personality.
It's just a game. People
it is
about that.
And you got these people.
It's just a game.
Yeah, there's some people that they are mental cripples. They can't get over their hatred. They're living brain donors. Their hatred. I'm like, man.
And social media has made it even worse.
Oh yeah,
it makes the animosity because you have all these lunatics on Twitter. Just constantly just posting left and right all these fringe things. It's like politics.
Yeah, and they can live in.
People just go overboard, but at least politics has some substance in it.
Yeah,
sports is just sports. It's just for entertainment. That's all it is.
Hey, and
people forget about that.
Well, you're right, and they can still live in the basement in their parents' home well into their 60s, and spew out all that vitriolic hatred. It's. Look, man, I tell you one thing. Over the years, I've watched the message boards and all. There's some great forums out there, but I don't get on them. People tell me what they see on them, but bottom line is we're getting ready for media days. In this college football season, all this talk about conference expansion and all, it comes and goes. We've seen, hey, what do you think it was like in 1933 when we broke up the Southern Conference and formed the SEC? What about 1953? Ask anybody that was around then. They're going to break up the SEC, the Southern. Now they're forming this Atlantic Coast Conference. What are we going to do? That was the Pac-8, the Pac-10, the Pac-12. We'll figure it out.
But here's the difference. Though, is in my eyes, the difference, of course, all throughout history, conferences have changed. They realigned. People moved. But what we're seeing today that we never saw in the past is schools that are getting out of their conference and joining conferences that are 2,000 miles away, right? So that really is a different trendsetter there. We saw that with West Virginia when they moved from the ACC all the way out to the Big 12, and you're like, what in the world is going on? Now we see Southern Cal and UCLA that are moving out to the Big Ten. You know, how many fans are going to be going out there maybe for the first game or two that they play against Big Ten teams? The novelty of playing Michigan and Nebraska, they'll bring 10, 15,000 fans. And then after the first couple games, we're talking about you're down into the hundreds. Fans are going to be traveling. I don't think it's healthy for the game of football when you have these conferences getting alignment of teams that are so far away. You can't bring, 10, 15,000 visiting fans anymore. And that really takes away the beauty of college football. And we're already having a problem as is right now with the teams that are close within a couple of hours of each other of visiting fans going to games. That's already has stopped. So now you're getting teams that are joining conferences across the country, and it's just it's a little worrisome to me because it's going to come down to where the colleges don't even care about attendance anymore because all their money is going to come from TV revenue. And once you take away that environment, what's going to happen to the game from there? So that is the reason I worry about what's going on with these conference realignments and teams jumping, from to a conference that's 2,000 miles away from them. You just simply can't afford to be able to travel and go to 3 or 4. I don't know about you, but I grew up going to 4 or 5 road games every single year.
Yeah.
Going to Auburn, going to Alabama, going to LSU, going to Arkansas, going to all these schools. And that's what really gets you addicted to the game as you become an adult. But when you just become a TV fan as a kid, how much addiction are you going to have as an adult? I think attendance is going to continue to really dwindle as we see these conferences taking in teams that are 1,000, 2,000 miles away. And that's a little bit scary for me.
All right, this is what it's got to happen. You're going to have a Pacific division of the Big Ten if they're going to grow it like this. I'm with you. You need to have a geographical, contiguous footprint, okay? So if Notre Dame comes into the SEC, you're going to make sure, and that's on a border with Kentucky, okay? You got to do something like that, guys. But I think going forward, we worried about this in the 1950s when we started putting college football games on TV. We got through that 1984. Every game's on TV, and now everybody's expanded their stadium. Attendance is as good as it's ever been. It's down a percent or two here and there. A lot of that's to do with the virus. Could be to do with the economy. Could be to do with $5, $6, $7 a gallon gas, depending on what part of the country you live. But we'll overcome this. We'll get through it. But I'm with you. What makes college sports so special is the fans traveling to each other's schools for the games and interacting with one another, working together, living together. Hell, my wife is a Tennessee fan. Her daughter, my stepdaughter, my daughter, she's an Alabama grad. She's still a good person. And I've got 3 kids that are all they're all Auburn people. But that's what's so. But I've got so many Ole Miss friends. It's insane. I counted it. I've been to 52 games at Ole Miss Stadium over the years. 52, 37, wow. 37 in Starkville, and a ton at Auburn, and Knoxville, Vanderbilt, LSU, different places, but they're all special. And do yourself a favor, get off your ass and go to the games, tailgate, go out and meet people. It's the greatest networking community for business relationships on earth. Is college football. That's what I mean. That's why, and I'm not dismissing what you said, Yancey, because when you speak, I'm going to listen. So is Jimmy. But Jimmy, you travel from Chicago down here to go to games. I mean, that's hardcore. Now, I do think it would be tough to get on the Greyhound in Detroit and go to Los Angeles to watch Michigan play Southern Cal. Take you a week to get there. You'd miss the game. But I mean, with so many stops, but still, it's better than flying today. If you talk to anybody that's flown lately, they'd rather walk. Okay, but I'm with you. That's why there's going to have to be, for the Pac-12 Big Ten merger to work with these teams, they're going to have enough of them to have a Pacific division. Jimmy's right. The natural geographic rivalries within your footprint. We're messing with fire if we don't watch this, Jimmy.
Well, the only constant in life, no matter what you're dealing with, business, sports, uh, no matter what the industry is in the business world, is change. And it's just inevitable. And all of what's happening right now is just,
Holy cow.
I think just a common, occurrence, not only in our country, but in countries all over the world. So it's just a matter of adjusting to them. And where we're at in college athletics right now is a point where the most prosperous conferences want to take advantage of their leverage, and that they have the best TV network deals, and they have been approached by schools with the largest brand names in college athletics requesting an opportunity to join their conference. And as with Texas and Oklahoma last year, USC and UCLA made the same approach to the Big Ten, and they saw a TV revenue situation in the Pac-12 that came nowhere close to matching what their real value was. So now you're in a situation where you're going to see two super conferences. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
That are really going to eventually kind of be on their own, be at a different level, and they will be the deal makers on who's going to win the national championship after this current contract is up. The Big Ten and the SEC will be the deciders on how many teams will be in the playoff, which will be a minimum of 12. And then just how many teams will eventually be in each conference, which in my mind will, I think in a scale of 5 to 7 years, will be 24 teams each. And I do think you're going to have that AFC, NFC type of setup. And having a playoff to determine the national championship. And these other conferences, the schools that didn't make the cut as far as being able to join another conference in this dog-eat-dog world, they're going to combine forces with Group of Five conferences, and then other schools and fellow former Power Five conferences that didn't make the cut, and they might be joining forces. So it's just going to be a crazy 5 to 7 year period, I think, going forward. But I don't think there would be anything wrong with, the Group of Five conferences, and then these schools from the Power Fives that didn't make the cut on super conference expansion to form their own organization and compete for their own national championship. I mean, I think there's a lot of possibilities down the road. And, the only thing we can do right now is just see exactly how it shakes out.
Yeah. And
But Jimmy, if we do that, you don't have a national champion. I mean, if it comes down to the Big Ten, and if the Big 12 swallows some of these Pac-10 schools up, and they get 16, 18 teams in the SEC, and you say, okay, we're going to have our own playoffs and determine a champion. You're just having really a conference champion. It's not a national championship. There's not 300 schools involved in basketball, or 118 in football, or 299 in baseball. You're just basically having a conference championship. It takes the whole allure of being a national champion away, because you're not a national champion. You're just a super conference champion.
Well, do you think that the Group of Five, the setup, at least what was going to happen until the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 hijacked it last year, of a 12-team playoff, having a Group of Five conference team in there. What I'm saying is that in these super conferences, which is going to happen, all the big brand names are going to be taken. I mean, do you think Cincinnati actually had a legitimate shot? I mean, I mean, some of those Group of Fives. I mean, and I'm not personally, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just making my statement just in
Sure.
response to the actions that, the powers that be in these major conferences are acting and the moves they're making. I think
Jimmy.
that's their vision of where this thing's going. And Yancey, don't think for a second that ESPN and Fox are heavily involved in these negotiations, because since the networks do not want to be perceived as running this operation, they're staying totally behind the scenes. But don't think for a second they are not telling these
Jimmy.
Power 5 conference commissioners and administrators, these are the teams that
Jimmy,
we're
can you hear
going
me?
to pay for if you offer them
Hello?
membership in your conference. And then these are the programs we will not pay for if they are admitted into your conference. So
All right.
this is really a conglomeration between
Jimmy.
Power 5. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Making sure you can hear me. We got to go to a break now because we got Jason Caldwell coming on. But now, Yancey, you said something made a lot of sense. Would somebody be just the super conference national champion? Would they be the national champion of all of college football? That's a great question. And we run out of time.
No, they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be. They
Yeah.
would not be a national champion.
I
Jimmy is 100% spot on. Everything he is saying is 100% spot on. There's no question about any of that. And I think the evil of all this is coming from ESPN mainly, and Fox underneath. There is so much money now in TV revenue. They don't care about the fans. They don't care about attendance like they used to. 3/4 of their athletic budget is now coming from TV revenue. So, of course, ESPN and Fox, mainly ESPN, it's going to be the underlining reason that all this is happening. They need to get rid of that stuff and branch out to several different radio and take a cut in TV revenue and get back to the old days and have 12, 10-team conferences and get back to closeness of the conferences being close, the teams in the conferences being close together, and have fans travel to the game to get back to having national championships.
Yes.
Since ESPN has gotten involved, there is no more competition in college football. Have you not noticed the trend here?
Yeah.
You're talking about 3 or 4 schools and everybody else. That is the underlining reason for the demise of what we're seeing in college football. Is one word: ESPN.
Yeah, and Yancey, look, the concern I have is that we better change this. And the fans, don't forget the fans. Fans are the free market, and I'm with you.
They're forgetting them.
I know
because they're getting too much money from ESPN.
Yancey, you're right. And look, great discussion, Yancey. Check out Yancey Porter.
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Tell Caldwell I said hello. He's the best in business.
I will.
I will.
And Jason's on here with us right now. And, Yancey, Jason Caldwell was awarded Alabama Sports Writer of the Year last week. So congratulations to Jason.
That is awesome.
To Jason Caldwell.
Nobody deserves it more than Jason.
Yeah, well.
Y'all take care, God. God bless. Y'all have a blessed day.
God bless you as well, Yancey.
Thank you, guys.
Great stuff. I love your passion. Let's take a quick commercial break on this Friday morning, July 8th of 22. Again, Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers will be with us when we come back for the final segment. It's hot. Drink heavily. That's water. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Browne back here with you, Jimmy Hodge and Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers. Maury Gaston just texted us here on the new video screen now that we're live streaming. Keep those blinds and shades up so I can keep looking through your windows and watching color TV. It's expensive out there nowadays, and don't have the cable anymore. The missus and I got rid of it. So we could subscribe to Jason Caldwell and Inside the Auburn Tigers website and magazine to get the best coverage out there. Jason, again, congratulations, Alabama Sports Writer of the Year. I know that's I'm sure you know that's a big deal, but later on you're going to realize who you're in the company with, but you have earned it. And I go back to a few pivotal moments when there have been some big stories out there. And I like what you said. You said, I don't want to say anything because there's so much misinformation out there that it wouldn't be right to do it. And I credit you as a true grit journalist because you were more concerned with getting it right versus trying to get it first and taking credit for something that you didn't do. Like some people out there, unfortunately, do. Shame on them. But we're always glad, honored, and damn proud to have you on Sidelines. So welcome aboard. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, no, it's it's a busy time when you start thinking about the way this thing works nowadays. Used to be the dog days of July, but as we've seen here recently, whether it be USC and UCLA going across the country to the Big Ten, all the kind of the rumors floating in the air about what happens with the rest of the leagues, and I don't know, it's a topsy-turvy time in college athletics, and I don't really know where we're headed, other than I think we're headed for a place that a lot of fans won't recognize, and I'm not so certain that it's best for the fan. A lot of people think it's going to be best for the sport and growth and TV and all those things, and they're probably right. But I'm not so certain that it's going to be best for the individual fan who's grown up going to games and tailgating and do those things. I don't know that we're going to recognize what we're watching here, soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting, all the stuff that's going on, but we better get it right. It's just some of the change. You can get some more big intersectional games that'll be played, but we got to be careful. The fans are the ultimate arbiters. I call it the free market, whatever, but that's where we've got to get this right. And the reason I like the SEC, I mean, I've grown up in it, but we're all connected. I mean, every state is connected in the SEC. If Notre Dame, the wild card, and we've talked a lot about, comes into the SEC, that would be a connecting to the state. Indiana connects to Kentucky, but it's the cross-country deal. Southern Cal, UCLA to the Big Ten. They're going to have to do something there. So anyway, a lot of wild possibilities. Jason, let's get down to football here. Auburn sitting there. They were way back at 82nd in recruiting. Only have 4 commitments, but all 4 of them are 4-star players. 3 of the kids are 4 stars, in-state kids from Alabama. And there are 22 4-stars, you told us, in the state this year. 6, maybe 7 5-stars. It's a generationally exceptional high school football talent-wise year in the state. A while back I read where you said Auburn's in good shape with 16 of the top 30 kids in Alabama. They've got to be in good shape with as many kids as possible. What is your gut feeling on how you think Auburn's going to finish out in recruiting?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge, to be quite honest. You start looking at those guys in the state of Alabama, and a lot of those guys are coming off the board. You look in just the last few days, I'll give it the last couple of weeks, and you've seen Tamarian Parker from Central Phoenix City commit to Penn State, who was one of the guys early on that I thought Auburn had a really good chance with. You just saw Keldrick Falk commit to Florida State, a guy that I thought and still think Auburn could wind up at Auburn, but at the moment he's committed to Florida State and says he's not taking any other visits. So, those guys have come off the board. Dakari Nelson from Selma committed to Penn State. And then you've seen some of these bigger name guys. Tony Mitchell that Auburn was in the mix with committed to Alabama. So look at him and Jaleel Hurley are the top 2 corners in the state, along with a kid from Central Phoenix City, AJ, who committed to Georgia. So you've got the top 3 corners in the state committed to Alabama and Georgia, respectively. 5-star Peter Woods comes off the board today. Looks like Clemson potentially or Alabama. So these guys they're starting to come off the board a little bit, and Auburn has done a pretty good job in getting a few of those guys. But you got to get more. We talked about it last year, and going into this year, that you've got to get your fair share. And with all of those guys, 4 or 5 is not going to be a fair share when you have that many guys. Not if you're at one of the in-state schools. You got to have more than that. And so we'll see what Auburn's able to do, the rest of this month of July and into the season. I think the coaches know it. A lot of the kids are talking about it. They need a really fast start. They need to win some games early to kind of get some of the momentum going. And somebody asked me, how many wins is enough? And I don't know that there's an answer for that, because to me, it has to start so fast. Just, winning a few games, late and kind of putting it together at the end. Kids are going to sign in December, and it may be too late then. So for me, the one chance Auburn has to really go out and grab some momentum in this class is going to be about 5-0 to start the year. When all those games at home, beat Penn State, beat LSU, if you do that, then you've got a chance to really, I think, grab some momentum in this class. And I think that's the one shot they have to really jump up a whole lot. It's tough. It's a tough group, and something's happening in the last few years in Alabama that we never thought would be possible. Forever you didn't see kids from Alabama leaving to go to other Power 5 schools unless Auburn, Alabama didn't offer. You started seeing that the last couple of years, and we've seen it more this year than ever. It's a change, and it's a stark reality now for Auburn, and it's why, I talked about early on. I thought, hey, put the clamps down and focus almost solely on the state of Alabama because it was that important. And right now, it's a dogfight for them for just about every one of these kids.
Well, you think about Auburn in the state of Georgia. Auburn's got to get heavy into Georgia and heavy into Florida. And are they making progress over there? Because if they're not doing, they've got to. The in-state problem, it's just it is a surprise. And I got to ask this question: Patrick Nix, he played at Auburn. His son, I don't think he really left on great terms. The way he left Auburn. He's the head coach over at Phoenix City Central. I remember a couple of years ago, there were like 30 Division I players identified on that team at Phoenix City Central. Is that going to be a problem for Auburn? I know Clemson's been coming in. They got Justin Ross and a few other players over the years from Phoenix City. But it as an Auburn fan, you look at it and you say, wow, this is an incredible year in state. And you got Penn State getting 2 studs, Florida State. I mean, this has got to stop, or else Auburn isn't going to start their comeback. They've got to dig themselves out of the hole. They've gone out. I mean, where was the damage done that were the seeds that were, if you're Auburn, they're now reaping the miserable effects of. I mean, where something had to have happened years ago for this to be where it is right now. I'm not looking at what Alabama's doing, but these out-of-state schools coming down there and getting some of the best players. Yeah, you're right. We know how it used to be, but can you pinpoint it to any 1 or 2 events?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's any 1 or 2 events. I think it's been an issue with the lack of production in terms of NFL draft stuff. I think that's had an impact.
I agree with that.
But I think to me that the biggest thing has been you look at 3 of the main schools you're having to recruit against in Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. Those 3 in Ohio State have been about as 4 dominant programs as we've seen in the last 50 years in college football, and they've all been at the same time. And all of those schools are within a couple of 100 miles of your campus. and you're recruiting most of the same players because Clemson recruits like an SEC school in the ACC.
Yes.
And so I think that's had a profound impact on Auburn as well, because a lot of these kids, I mean, I think about guys like A.J. Terrell and those guys. That's a guy Auburn recruited heavily from right around Atlanta, a corner, and you go, man, that's a guy that in 2004, Auburn gets that kid probably 75% of the time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Georgia was good, but they weren't great. Clemson was okay. I mean, obviously Auburn had the upper hand against Alabama, and, in less than 20 years, it's completely flipped. Where you're talking about, those are three of the it schools for guys. And so it's those types of battles now that are really hard to win. And Auburn still wins their fair share, but the problem is that now you're so much chasing those schools that you've got to win more than your fair share. And that's kind of been my point. Like just holding on and being, getting some of those 4 stars and being 17th or 18th in the country looks good on paper. But when you start, you go, hey, what is that in the Southeastern Conference? And you look up and you're 9th in the league.
Correct.
And that's where the issue is. And because then you turn around and the Kentuckys and the South Carolinas of the world, Tennessee, those schools, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, all of these schools now, you turn around and they're not behind you anymore. They're right there and walking step by step with you. And so that's the issue when you start looking at the way this thing works is, while you're trying to catch up, everybody else is catching up with you. And so that's how you get the seasons like we've seen the last 2 years, where you have, 6 or 7, 6 and 6, 7 and 5 schools. And people go, it's a down year. No, it's not so much it's a down year in the league. It's just that everybody in this league has gotten better. The bottom is coming to the middle. And, that's, I talked about it last year. I said, that's what we've seen in baseball for years. And we just saw it this past year where you go, man, a team that finished 6th in the West won the national championship in baseball because it was a tournament. In football, you have those capabilities. It's a much different sport, but it's still the same concept where you're going, that's how much better the bottom of in the middle of this league is than it has been in the past. The only issue is the top is so good, it's hard to challenge Alabama and Georgia. But you see everybody else just feasting on each other because there's not much difference. And that's the thing. You've got to separate yourself from that middle of the pack before you can worry about catching Alabama and Georgia. And that's the issue that Auburn, LSU, and others have right now.
And I think Auburn is still paying for firing, Gus Malzahn in mid-December and not even introducing Brian Harsin until Christmas Eve. That didn't help. But really, you're right. Tony Barnhart said on the show a couple of days ago, kids today look at Notre Dame, they go, yeah, it's cold up there. They don't know about all that great tradition they have. Most of them don't. And Auburn, 12th winningest program in the history of college football. Right now, they had the 8th or 9th best recruiting class in their own conference. You're right. That's got to change. And you better hope, if you're Auburn, that you start off 5-0 so you can change the narrative. Auburn's at as pivotal a moment as they've been since they came off the 81 season under Dye the first year. And in 1982, they had all those games at home early and finished the season 9-3 and broke the 9-year losing streak to Alabama. They've got to have a season like that. And I think it's possible. I mean, I think these guys that are still at Auburn are as close a group as there has been. I think these coaches are close. But you're right. 5-0, here we go. That's got to be just beat on that. You win all those games at home, and then you got some. You can not relax, but I don't think you're going to be so frantic playing with your hair on fire, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, we all know that the SEC is a line of scrimmage league, and Auburn has had their struggles there. And as we discussed with Jason many times in previous conversations, these young elite recruits now, they want to know how many NFL players in these different position groups that you produced. And I think, as he mentioned, this is a really critical season. You got to come out of the gate strong. If you can go 5-0, then even if you go 500 the rest of the way, because that last 2 months, that is a brutal stretch of opponents. If you can come out of there with an 8-9 win season, have some momentum, have some nice wins, then I think you can really gain the confidence of a number of these upcoming recruits, because we all know this 2023 class is going to be the strongest in Alabama high school history. I think it's safe to say. And even though they may have made early verbal commitments, as the season goes along and you make a really good progress and you're having a better season than maybe a lot of other people thought you would have, hey, you don't have to sign on that line till the second week of December. So you can make a lot of difference there. And also, it would really erase a lot of the negative, I think, momentum you had to deal with in regard to, a first-year coach almost being let go at Auburn last year. So, I think it's just really big in those two areas. And Jason had mentioned in an earlier conversation that he felt that Auburn had a good chance this season of having 5 to 7 players drafted next April in the NFL draft, which would be a big plus. And, what's your sense right now? I know you mentioned it briefly, but as far as a lot of these iconic coaches in Alabama and Georgia, and their feeling as far as where Auburn's going, is it kind of a wait and see, or is there some momentum building there because they brought in some guys, Jimmy Brumbaugh, former SEC players that were very successful, and they know how the recruiting game works?
Yeah, I think bringing in Brumbaugh, Christian Robinson, Ike Hilliard, I think those are really good moves. But I think there's a wait and see approach. I mentioned it with the kids. I think it's that way with a lot of people. They want to wait and see with the way the year finished last year. Quarterback battle that you don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, there's some big questions. I mean, the schedule, quite honestly, other than the fact that you have Georgia and Alabama both on the road, and you almost feel like you're starting the year 0-2, because it'd be the biggest upset you could have to win in one of those two places, considering the way that not just Auburn but most everybody has to fare in those markets. But you look at it, and I think everybody's kind of taking that wait and see approach, because there are question marks. But you have Mercer and San Jose State to start the year, and you go, can you figure it out at quarterback? Can you kind of figure out what that offense is going to look like with who's running the show, and then get Penn State in week 3? And that's a game that Auburn played toe to toe with Penn State last year. They fell off at the end of the year. They sent some guys to the NFL. They recruited really well, but you feel like if you're going to have a season to turn some things around, that's a must-win game. You got to beat Penn State at home. There's games that you have to win on this schedule, and because you're going to Georgia, to Alabama, you're also going to Mississippi State and to Ole Miss. That's 4 teams that you look at and go, man, you're gonna have to do some work to win games in those places. And so, it sets up well early in terms of having all these games at home. But you're right, the back end of the schedule is a brute. But it could be some momentum built early, but there are questions. I think everybody has them. And I think it's a wait and see what this thing looks like, especially after, those 3 or 4 weeks in the season, to see what you look like when you play Penn State and LSU back to back. And, get onto the schedule. You start talking about, you get 5 at home, but then you got, Georgia, and then a home game, and then you go to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss in week 7 of 7 straight weeks before an off week. You got to build some depth on the lines of scrimmage. and you got to find an identity pretty quickly.
Jason, if you're an Auburn player, I guess a fan, you look at this roster, compare it to Auburn teams 5 and 10 years ago in terms of likely NFL draft picks, because the benchmark, obviously, since Nick Saban's been there, his first year, April of 2008, we know there were no players drafted. But since then, they've had 114 players drafted, multiple 41 in the first round. Although Cincinnati had 9 players drafted in April, Alabama had 7. Alabama beat them in that head-to-head competition. But Cincinnati's a program that's coming on and getting stronger and stronger. Jason, what about, and you mentioned player development. That's what everybody wants to know, is how can you get me to the league? Is Auburn bringing in people behind the scenes to help in that area?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. The biggest thing for player development is getting good players and then on the field, those guys producing and winning games is part of it. I think you look and you talk about kind of going into this year, projections of who you think. I think on defense, Auburn has a load of guys that have a chance. If they can stay healthy, a guy like Owen Popo will be drafted if he can come back and kind of finish off what we've seen from him in the past. But Colby Wooden, you look at Colby Wooden and Derek Hall and Eku Leota, Nehemiah Pritchett, Jalen Simpson. I mean, I think they got 6 guys that you look at and go, those are 6 potential draft guys. But flip to the offense and you say, okay, where are your draft guys coming on offense? Tank Bigsby, going to be a draft guy. Where do you go from there? That's what college football is. College football is an offensive game. And we look at Georgia last year and you go, Georgia had a once in a generational type defense with all the guys they had.
Yeah.
They played really well. If Alabama has both their starting wide receivers in that game, Georgia don't win a national championship, in my opinion. They're still not good enough. You got to score points. And you look at Auburn and go, that's what you're chasing right now. Can you find the guys in those skill positions at wide receiver? And right now you look and there's, they could get one of those guys. A guy like Coy Moore could come in from LSU and be a guy. They've added some pieces, but they haven't proven it at Auburn yet, or have proven it really anywhere. And so to me, that's the question mark, is on offense. You're going, where are those draft choices coming on offense? You look at, a guy like Killian Zaire. I think he's a guy that could develop into a draft prospect on that offensive line. Most of the rest of the guys are guys that have played a lot of football, but they're going to be older, 6-year seniors, and it's hard to imagine that those guys even playing really well. It's hard for the NFL to sink money into a 24-year-old guy because of the development time that's needed. So to me, that's the step, is can you find those guys on offense? Alabama's done it. They've changed their roster. And not only that, it's not just in recruiting. Schools like Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson, and those schools now can go out and go, you know what I need? I need a left tackle. Well, let's go find that guy in the transfer portal. I need a dynamic wide receiver. Let's go get that guy. We need a really good running back. Alabama has the best roster in college football, in my opinion. You're talking about them in Cincinnati and draft choices. The difference is Cincinnati this year might have 1 player drafted. Alabama's going to have about a dozen, in addition to the guys they had last year. But they also went out and said, you know what? We're going to bring in about 4 more guys that we feel like we need to get better. So they went out and got 4 or 5 starters in addition to the best roster in college football. That's the hard part, is because people just think you're going to snap your fingers in the transfer portal and go get those guys. Well, everybody else is looking for those guys too. And so it becomes an issue of, okay, it turns back into recruiting. You're going to go to Alabama for a year, or you're going to Clemson or wherever. And that's the job you're chasing right now for most of these other schools, is that can you go get those guys and bring them in when everybody else wants them to? So it's a doubly difficult situation now for schools like Auburn and others.
Yeah, and you need to be scoring about 40, 45 points, 48 points a game. Alabama upped their production 14 points on average, what they were scoring per game 5 or 6 years ago, and look what that's done to them. They they're an offensive leader now nationally. So it's just, you're right. Jason, tell people how they can follow you. We've run out of time, but we'll be back with you next week. But great content as always. And again, congratulations on being named Alabama Sports Writer of the Year. You deserve it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, you can check us out at autigers.com, auburnundercover.com, part of the 24/7 network, and can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
All right. Thanks so much. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8-10 a.m. Central, as we are every Monday through Saturday. We also on Saturdays, of course, Fox 98.3 FM in Sylacauga, Central Alabama. Lee Perryman of the Radio Alabama Group. But a great show, Jimmy. We will be working more and more on this live streaming, so look for that. And the video component of it, we're working it out. This is our first day, so we had a bird come in through the chimney, flying around in the studio, but Delta didn't bark, so she gets an extra treat for that. But hey, go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And people, we live in the greatest country in the world. No matter what anybody says, we don't apologize for being exceptional. We are simply put Americans. Enough said. We're out of here. See you tomorrow.